Hi everybody, Josh here, broadcasting from the home office, and I wanted to bring you some thoughts on the double Parsha this week, but focusing on a section in Parshat Masei, on the Arei HaLeviim and the Arei Miklat, the Levitical cities and the cities of refuge. This is a Dvar Torah entitled Cities of Strangers. After a seemingly interminable itinerary of all the various way stations and destinations the people of Israel wended their way through in their sojourn in the Sinai, we finally have reached the beginning of the end. The Israelites have reached the steps of the Jordan with the Promised Land in line of sight, and plans are being made, not just in terms of how to reach Canaan, but now how to settle it as well. Moses, directed by God, divvies up the land into allotments, one for each tribe. He even initiates Jewish history's first example of a real estate negotiation, when Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh decide they want to settle in the suburbs of the Transjordan, instead of within the land proper. All the tribes end up receiving, according to the rabbis, exactly as much land as they need to facilitate their flourishing. All that is, save one. After the tribes have received their allotments of the land in a whiplash move, God then commands Moshe to tell them to give part of it back. Moses is told to instruct the Israelites to donate from their apportioned holding cities for the Levites to dwell, with a pasture around them. The Levites, perhaps feeling left out as the other tribes received their allotments, now have places to live, but they are still left in suspense. Yes, they have portions in the land, but they are ambiguous allotments, located within the domain of other tribes. In addition, they come with regulations. God relays that the towns will be for human habitation, while the pastures will be for shepherding their flocks. Rashi, drawing on Arachin 33b, explains that the pasture, migrash, you might know that word from Ramah, the migrash was a protected conservation area, kind of like Canaan's own green belt, where development was not allowed. He writes, "The pasture was an expansive, open space outside the city, for the sake of its beautification. One was not allowed to build houses or plant vineyards there, nor to sow fields. The migrash was a wild, free space where animals could graze and people could go out to enjoy the land in all of its natural glory." The Netziv, in his commentary Ha'amek Davar, writes that one was not allowed to rezone the cities, neither to develop the pastures, nor to make the city a pasture. He specifies that just as the fields were protected from development, so were the cities secured as areas of human habitation. Indeed, the cities of the Levites were to be places in which it had to be assured that people could simply live. Rashi and the Or HaChaim note that there needed to be a guaranteed quality of life. The Levite cities were organized and designed to provide what humans and animals needed to live. They were not zones of opportunity or potential profit, but rather assurances of habitation. This guarantee of a quality of life was something all the tribes had a stake in, since, as mentioned above, their holds were the source of the Levites' cities. But they were not resentful, as Sforno notes that the land was apportioned equally to each tribe, not in terms of quantity, since some tribes were larger than others, and thus needed more space, but rather in terms of quality. So, the tribes who had to donate more land to the Levites, i.e. more cities, did not lose out, since all the tribes contributed equally in the final analysis. Every tribe of Israel had an equal stake in the guarantee of a decent quality of life, a planned city designed to facilitate human habitation and natural flourishing. Why was it in the Levites' cities that this somewhat utopian objective was deployed? Why wasn't it a general policy? The following verses help provide essential context, as the cities were not only for the Levites, but were also potentially for others as well. The Torah says, "The cities that you give to the Levites will come along with 6 cities of refuge, Arei Miklat, designed as safe havens where one can flee, if you have, accidentally, killed. Plus, the 42 cities donated to the Levites, the total is 48 cities, along with their pastures." As detailed further on in the parak, the Arei Miklat were established as safe havens if, having unintentionally or through negligence, killed another, one can flee and find sanctuary and safety from a pursuant avenger, that is, someone from the victim's family seeking vigilante justice. So, while the majority of the cities seem to be for Levites alone, 6 of the 48 Levitical municipalities also served a dual purpose as cities of refuge. However, the Chizkuni argues that every single one of the 48 cities could also serve as a safe haven. The 6 specially designated cities offered sanctuary to anyone fleeing potential violence, even if they find it accidentally. But if the one fleeing intentionally chose a different Levitical city, it would have to welcome them in as well. All of the cities of the Levites were potential cities of refuge, and thus each and every one had to be designed strictly to ensure that all its inhabitants could live and be well. The fact that each of the tribes contributed to the Levite municipal system is not just out of their frumkeit or even being commanded by God, but rather because they are potential beneficiaries themselves. While we always want to think that it's some other poor soul that will fall on hard times or have to completely upend their lives, we cannot predict or control the future, and Israel needed a secure and organized system to ensure that they will have the help they will need when they will need it the most. In concluding, I want to share one last commentary from the great early modern sermonizer, Rabbi Ephraim Lunchins, from his parish, the Kli Yakar. In his comment on the Torah's highlighting the number of Levite cities besides the 6 cities of guaranteed refuge, he notes that there must be some special significance to the cities' numbering 42. This might be a wink towards Douglas Adams fans, but he writes that the Levite cities correspond to the 42 encampments the Israelites made in the desert. Remember the interminable itinerary mentioned above? There were 42 Masei, or Matot. There were 42 way stations that the Israelites had to travel through in their sojourn in the Sinai. So for them to travel in the desert was for them to be a stranger. But the Israelites were about to lose that fundamental connection to vulnerability and to life's fragility as they are about to settle the land. They are at risk of losing their connection to their foundational identity as strangers in a strange land, the fulcrum of their ethics, as God reminds them, and us, time and time again. But the Levites are not granted an allotment of land, but rather are the beneficiaries of a donation, which is a much less secure position. They will not own the cities, nor are they allowed to develop them. All they are allowed to do is live there. It is essential, argues the Kli Yakar, that the cities of refuge are the cities of the Levites, because whoever enters such a city, fleeing for their life, seeking safety and security, will themselves be a stranger. If the sanctuary cities were in the tribal allotments, then those seeking safe haven will always be seen as outsiders, aliens. At baseline, this weakens their safety, since being perceived as if they do not really belong there means that their chance of being expelled and thus potentially exposed to those seeking to kill them has now become non-trivially higher. It's crushing as the Kli Yakar imagines the city's residents exhibiting the nativism that they faced in Egypt, flinging that self-same epithet at those seeking shelter, that they are strangers in a strange land. But if the cities of refuge are where the Levites live, then they will be strangers amongst strangers, displaced persons living amongst those who are never allowed to own land, people trying to live amidst those whose job it is, essentially, to ensure that others can live as well. We are commanded never to forget the fragility at the heart of our own origin story. While most ancient and even modern cultures have a heroic narrative that defines them, emperors and conquering kings, what defines us as Jews is that we know vulnerability and lack of security, a lack of belonging. We know it firsthand. God tells us, "You know the soul of the stranger, because you yourselves were strangers." On the cusp of settling the land and being sojourners no longer, the Levites are to serve as a preserved core of the essence of what it means to be a Jew, to be a stranger. We have the cities of refuge not just as a way station of last resort in case of unforeseen disaster, but also as a mnemonic, a memory device, ensuring that we never forget what our history teaches us and what kind of future we are to ensure, that all those who seek safety can have a place to live. Good Shabbos.